Hello everyone and welcome to yet another webinar as part of Meirc Webinar Series 2017. Today's webinar is titled HR Administrators Competencies Toolkit. My name is Jimmy Haddad. Before we actually begin, allow me to ask you about the volume of the audio. Kindly respond in the chat box on the bottom part of your screen by just mentioning whether the audio is fine or not. Excellent. To begin, I'm going to introduce myself briefly. My name is Jimmy Haddad. I'm currently a partner with Meirc Training and Consulting. I really fell in love with the whole field of HR as I began my career back in Canada many years ago, especially when working at Standard Life as a training specialist and later on as a consultant in business solutions, where I worked with a number of internal departments, mainly the HR department, to focus on developing HR policies and procedures. I took this passion with me since then, and currently in my role at Meirc, I develop and deliver a number of courses in human resources management. I hold a master's in educational technology and 2 graduate certificates, one in human resources management and the other in leadership from the University of McGill. I'm also a certified HRBP, Human Resources Business Professional, and a certified professional from SHREM, the Society of Human Resources Management. I hold 2 other degrees or certifications in training, one as a certified training practitioner and the other as a certified professional in learning and performance from ATD. Now, the purpose of this webinar is really to shed some light on 3 important things. First of all, I would like to define and try to get some common understanding of what a competency is. Second, I'm going to focus on what are some major competencies that are required by HR administrators. And finally, I'm going to try to link some behaviors required for HR administrators as they do their daily jobs. Now, to begin, I'm going to start with the definition of what a competency is. The most basic definition of what a competency is, it's basically a combination of 3 elements: knowledge, skills, and abilities. Now, an easy way to remember that is to think of the KSA acronym. Knowledge is what you know about something. Skills is your ability to use what you know in order to perform a particular task. And abilities is the accumulation of your experience in a given domain. Let me try to give you an example. Assume we consider presentation skills to be a competency. Knowledge of presentation skills could be knowing things like the structure of a successful presentation. It could be also knowing about things related to non-verbal or body language related to presenting successfully. But that particular knowledge does not guarantee that the person has the skills to actually stand up in front of a group of audience and actually present successfully. Having that knowledge does not guarantee that an individual will be able to respect a given structure or control body language during a given presentation. Now, abilities can be gained by actually practicing presentation skills, standing up in front of others, and being able to present for more than one time until one is really confident about his ability to stand up and present. So what does this really tell us? In short, to be competent at something, you need to know how to do it, but most importantly, you also need to practice doing it. So a person is competent in something only when these 3 things are available. They know how to do it. They also have practiced doing it for a period of time. Now, some of you may have seen that Competency may also be defined as knowledge, skills, and attitude. Whether we use attitude or ability, there are always three important elements that make up a particular competency. In attitude, it's a matter of whether a person is confident presenting in front of others, whether a person wants to actually present in front of others. And by the way, this is true in any single competency that we may want to consider. Let's take another example. Sales, for instance. A person may know the sales process in a given organization or the best techniques of selling, but in essence, his skills of applying this knowledge might not be as strong as his knowledge. Now, would that make that person competent? The answer, in short, would be no. Only when his skills in selling are above average, and only when he has sold repeatedly, then his abilities would also be high, making him a competent salesperson. Now, the reason why I wanted to start with a definition is because often HR professionals would confuse these three things together. And often we only focus on the knowledge or the know-how of any particular HR function, process, or procedure. For us at Meirc, the most important is to focus on more the skills and the abilities when it comes to any HR related function. Now, having said that, what are some major roles or responsibilities of HR administrators? Usually an HR administrator in various organizations is an entry-level position within the HR department. Now, depending on the roles and responsibilities or the function in which that individual works, their responsibilities may vary. If they work, for instance, in payroll, their responsibilities may include administering payroll. If they work in recruitment and selection, some of the responsibilities might be related to coordinating interviews or connecting with recruitment agencies, setting up interviews, and perhaps administering correspondences. If they work in training and development, some of their responsibilities may include setting up training rooms, coordinating with training vendors, sending out invitations, administering feedback forms at the end of the course, reporting on the feedback forms. So really the roles and the responsibilities vary depending on the actual position within the HR function in any organization. Now, at the same time, I often ask people about what could be the major competencies that would allow HR administrators in any position to be able to properly set up interviews or properly administer payroll or have the ability to successfully report on feedback forms. And often I get mixed answers. So I'm going to try this with the group of participants on this webinar. And what I'm going to ask you to kindly do is simply in the box below, just write down whatever competency you may think is needed in a successful HR administrator. Anything that comes to your mind when it comes to a major competency required for HR administrators. Analytics, communication, planning and organizing, interviewing, multitasking. We see some common competencies again. People skills, attention to detail. For those of you who are focused on the competencies, you notice right away that there's a mix between some soft type competencies like communication, emotional intelligence, organizing, and some others that are perhaps slightly more technical, like interviewing skills. Now, often when I ask such a question in many of our public courses, I also follow it up with some characteristics of HR administrators. And often some of the responses that I hear are related to having some strong administration skills, having proficiency or are excellent in HR software that is used currently in their organization, having a high level of confidentiality, excellent interpersonal skills, also excellent and strong written and verbal communication skills. They like and enjoy working with people. They have diplomacy, they have some tact, they have an ability to work as part of a team, and they have attention to detail. As you can see, we can have a huge number of competencies when it comes to building a successful HR administrator. Now, thinking about the whole concept of competencies, one has to start from somewhere or have a starting point on what are the important things that an HR professional needs to focus on, especially early on in the career. And for me, the starting point would be by referring to some sort of a framework or a model. And the model that I want to share with you here is a model that has been developed and researched by the Society of Human Resources Management that focuses on 9 major competencies that need to be available in HR professionals at various levels, including the entry level of HR administrators. Now, what's important about the 9 competencies that you see in front of you, which are human resource expertise, relationship management, consultation, leadership and navigation, communication, global and cultural effectiveness, ethical practice, critical evaluation, and business acumen, is not only to know these competencies, but to understand their definition by some behaviors that HR professionals need to consistently do day in and day out to make sure that they are showing these competencies as part of their work. So allow me to briefly define each and provide you some behavioral indicators that one can consider as part of their work. I'm going to begin with the first one, which is human resource expertise. Now, by definition, it's the knowledge of principles and practices and function of effective human resource management. A successful HR administrator needs to understand the concepts and principles of human resources. They need to know what are the best practices in recruitment and selection, what are the best practices in compensation and benefits, what are the best practices in training and development across all HR functions. So they need to really develop knowledge of general HR practices, but in addition, they need to develop knowledge of HR technology. Now, another behavior that they can do is they need to employ standard operating procedures and policies when performing HR transactions. Organizations are bound by their internal HR procedures and policies. A successful HR administrator applies all of these policies and procedures all the time. And a successful HR administrator uses relevant HR technology system for administrative and service needs. There are plenty of HR software that is available out there. Having human resource expertise is having the ability to use one of these systems and use it properly. Another of the competencies is relationship management. And in relationship management, it is defined as the ability to manage interactions, to provide service, and to support the organization. Managing interactions, to provide service to internal employees and support the entire organization. Now, as an HR administrator, some of the behaviors that can be done to show this competency is to develop a network of contacts, both within the organization and with external partners serving the organization. When I say a network of contacts, I mean that HR administrators should know decision makers within the organization, within various departments. They should befriend colleagues from across other functions and other departments. That is from the internal perspective, but also externally, HR administrators should be involved in HR functions outside the organization, HR events, to build on the relationship management aspect and growing their sphere of contacts outside the organization. Now, HR administrators as well, in building good relationship, soon they will become a first point of contact for employee questions. And this is part of their role. If they have good relationship, trustworthy relationships with others, employees will feel comfortable asking for their HR services. Now, another of the competencies is that of consultation, which is the ability to provide guidance to organizational stakeholders. Now, to provide guidance to organizational stakeholders, one should be able to develop a proactive perspective on consulting project. And one should have the ability to gather and analyze facts and data for business solutions. When we talk about guidance, often individuals from outside the HR function may have questions about things related to the local labor laws. Providing proper guidance and consultation is having the ability to provide the right information as indicated by labor law to all of our internal employees. The fourth of these competencies is that of leadership and navigation, defined as the ability to direct and contribute to initiatives and processes within the organization. Now, in contributing to initiatives, the contribution could be in the implementation of the initiatives, in the sense that, assume we're modifying our existing interviewing process, or we're introducing a new software, or we are introducing a new form to be completed by employees. An HR administrator should have the ability to assist in such an implementation. It could be in the implementation of presenting that solution, or in the implementation of organizing the rollout of such a solution. To be able to do that, an HR professional needs to consistently act with and represent the culture of the organization. And representing the culture of the organization focuses more on the leadership aspect of successful HR administrators. Leadership here in the sense of showing the real values of the organization. Another of the competencies worth considering is communication, a very common competency that is defined as the ability to effectively exchange information with stakeholders. Now, what are some behaviors that HR administrators can do with regard to this competency is produce accurate and error-free documents. And these documents are the many reports that are produced. It could be the various correspondences and emails that are sent from the HR department to other parties concerned. It could be communicating policies and procedures to new and existing employees. It could be using discretion when communicating sensitive, confidential information. It also could be things related to promptly responding to employees' concerns via any written, verbal, or electronic type of communication. Doing all of these behaviors would demonstrate a high level of competence in communication. Another of the competencies is global and cultural effectiveness, defined as the ability to value and consider the perspectives and backgrounds of all parties. Now, more and more HR practitioners are working within a diverse organizational culture. And to be able to work in a diverse organizational culture, an HR administrator should possess general knowledge of local cultural issues. One of the things I always focus about is about having a wide knowledge of cultural awareness, knowing the various differences and traditions among cultures working within the organization. And once that is done, an HR administrator will then be able to show and respect for differences and promote inclusion of diverse individuals. Another common behavior that an HR practitioner may do in regarding global and cultural effectiveness is to assist with implementation of diversity and culture programs in local settings and develop general knowledge of local and global economic trends. So it's not just about knowing the traditions and specifics of certain cultures, but also extending that to understanding local and global economic trends. Another of the 9 competencies is that of ethical practice, which is the ability to integrate core values, integrity, and accountability throughout all organizational and business practices. And some behaviors could include identifying potential conflict of interest and reporting the potential conflict of interest. It could be following policies consistently and being fair across all employees, regardless of favoritism. And another behavior could be that of establishing oneself as a credible, trustworthy source for employees to voice their concerns. Critical evaluation is yet another of the major competencies. It's the ability to interpret information to make business decisions and recommendations. Now, behavioral indicators related to critical evaluation focus on reporting, on data entry, and key metrics. HR administrators should be able to differentiate and analyze things like general metrics in HR. Examples could be time to fill, cost per hire, could be reporting on ROI of training. To be able to do that, an HR administrator needs to collect, synthesize data through surveys, focus groups, research, and plenty of other methods. They need to have some basic knowledge of statistics, research methods, and measurement concepts. They also need to identify sources of data and information. If they can do these things, then they'll be able to have a higher level of critical evaluation when it comes to doing their jobs. The final of these 9 competencies is that of business acumen, which is the ability to understand and apply information to contribute to the organization's strategic plan. Now, that competency requires demonstrating the basic knowledge of business lines and product services. For those who work in large organizations, it's always recommended to know the various divisions, product lines, product services, business lines within your entire group. And in addition to that, one needs to develop basic knowledge of competitor organizations, those organizations that are directly competing with the services and the products offered by your organization. This allows you to keep an eye of the practices that such organizations are doing. And highly important for HR administrators to develop familiarity with business terms and general acronyms across all business lines and divisions. Such behavioral indicators will allow HR administrators to show even greater level of competence in what is known as business acumen. For me, and hopefully for many other HR professionals, more specifically administrators, these 9 competencies are the starting point of your role as an HR administrator. For me, these are the ingredients. For those who want to be successful in such a domain, make sure that you assess yourself on these 9 competencies and always ask yourself, what's my current level when it comes to human resource expertise? What's my current level in communication? What's my current level in ethical practice? Business acumen, leadership and navigation, consultation, so on and so forth. If your answer to such question is that you still have ways of improvement, then the next step becomes focusing on some behaviors that will allow you to show a greater level of competence in any of these 9 competencies. To wrap up, and if you're interested to learn more about the role of HR administrators in organizations, I highly encourage you to visit Meirc.com, and more specifically, a course on HR administration skills. You'll see in front of you, this course will be held this year in Dubai. The session will be held in Arabic between the 1st and the 5th of October, and another one will be held in English between the 10th and the 14th of December. Before I wrap up and thank you, if you have any question, please use the chat box on the bottom side of your screen to add any question that you wish. Mahmoud has a question related to the best policy for code of conduct that can be used within the organization. When we talk about any policy, Mahmoud, and to have a comprehensive policy, one should consider many elements related to code of conduct. What I will do is I will make sure that we stay in touch after this webinar so that I can give you some more details about, so understand first of all your requirement and your question about code of conduct, and then I can perhaps share with you my insights on that particular topic. For those of you asking about the PowerPoint, definitely we will share after the webinar early next week with all of the attendees on this webinar. You will receive by email a soft copy of all the PowerPoint slides used. Abdulaziz, concerning the question on regulator versus administrator, an HR individual is more of an administrator. Mahmoud, you can definitely know more about Competencies Framework. I'll be more than happy to answer any specific question that you may have. I'm going to leave you with my email address. You can send me an email on jhaddad@meirc.com. If you have any specific questions related to things like latest HR trends or a dedicated website for HR professionals, do stay in contact. I'll be more than happy to share with you any resource that you require. Now, having said that, allow me to thank you for attending this webinar, and hope to see you on future webinars. Until then, goodbye and be safe.
Meirc.com